Hey, everybody, it's Cam from Bulwark.
And I am Jack Cocchiarella. So glad to be joined by my favorite member of Congress, Jamie Raskin, on what is a special day, because right now we're recording and it's Constitution Day, which seems to be something not noticed by any members of Donald Trump's cabinet, specifically Pam Bondi. And Congressman, we've seen this administration target speech in so many different ways, but they have a new legal or illegal, I guess I should say, understanding of the way that they want to be targeting speech. Pam Bondi made an announcement that even conservatives were furious about on how this administration will be cracking down on what they call hate speech. Seems to be misinterpreted. Can you give a better understanding to the audience of what legal framework Pam Bondi is pseudo trying to operate under when she is attacking speech?
I will, and happy Constitution Day to you, Jack, and to Cam. She made a kind of elementary error that you see in a lot of first-year law students or people who haven't really studied the First Amendment, where they say, well, there's free speech and then there's hate speech, as if that's a separate legal category that's unprotected by the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has rejected that idea. I mean, hate speech is usually in the eye of the beholder, and it is protected as much as love speech or fear speech or anxiety speech or admiration speech. Those are kind of emotions or feelings, right? And so we don't censor the speech based on the emotional content there. Where the line has been drawn in American First Amendment law is with what we call incitement to imminent lawless action or violence. This is the Brandenburg case, and this is the Brandenburg doctrine that speech, no matter what its political, social, philosophical, emotional content is protected up until the point that it is inciting violence or imminent lawless action and is likely to produce it. So it's kind of deliberately calculated to produce violence, and it's likely to culminate in violence. That's basically the Brandenburg standard. And I think someone explained that to her. And I think they explained it to her by actually showing her some statements that had been made by Charlie Kirk, where he was defending hate speech, at least as a protected category. And I'm sure there are people who said that many things he said were hateful or, calculated to produce hate. And he made the point, which was correct legally, that hate speech is legally protected. So she then modified her remarks to conform to the constitutional standard of the Brandenburg decision. And she said, well, hate speech that ends up inciting violence or crime, that's not protected. There are, of course, other categories of unprotected speech. For example, defamation is not protected as long as its definition corresponds to the Supreme Court's decision in New York Times versus Sullivan. Child pornography is not protected. In fact, obscenity is not protected, although that's very narrowly defined today. But so there are different categories that have been roped off from First Amendment protection. But the thing called hate speech is not one of them.
That leads me to a question that I've had a lot in this administration, which is, do you think there was any sort of formal meeting with any legal experts or anything before Pam Bondi just kind of popped off about this? Or did Trump maybe just send her a text message off the cuff? Or do you think there was no coordination at all and she just kind of said, you know what, we're going to go with this, and then had to pay the price right after?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. It doesn't seem like they have an organized approach to the issue. I got to say, I was very disenchanted with a lot of the things that happened with Kash Patel today. But one thing I was pleasantly surprised about was that he was very careful to say that he denounced political violence across the board. And he said there's way too much political violence everywhere. There are a lot of people on the right, including Trump, including Vance, who are saying this is just a problem on the left, which of course is ridiculous. I mean, to have just lived through the nightmare in Minnesota with the assassination of House Speaker Melissa Wortman and her husband, and then the attempted killing of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, and then to turn around and just say this is all a problem on the left is ridiculous. And in fact, when because they've been doing that, a lot of my Democratic colleagues have been mobilizing the statistics to show, as the Anti-Defamation League has shown recently, that overwhelmingly political violence comes from the right. And last year, I believe that every political killing in America in 2024 was by somebody who was motivated by some form of right-wing domestic violence extremism, white supremacy, or anti-government extremism.
And although those statistics just speak so clearly and for themselves, it's been very difficult to get your colleagues to recognize them. Nancy Mace has just shouted them down, run away. Kash Patel didn't seem, all too interested in actually engaging in a real conversation. But an admission that he sort of made is that he would at least allow an investigation, a forensic investigation, he said, into the signature on Donald Trump's birthday note to Jeffrey Epstein. And we also saw the other day, really just ahead of all this testimony, but I'm sure Trump feels the same way in light of it, that when asked if he has confidence in Kash Patel, he says, I have great confidence in Pam Bondi. Do you think after the 2 days that we just saw from Kash Patel, this is someone who will be sticking around the administration for a while to come, especially with the Epstein flubs?
The Republican members of the House Judiciary Committee were very supportive of him and had rallied around him. And I think that, Trump may need him because he is in the full-blown cover-up mode on the Epstein file. So if I had to bet, I would say that they're going to let him try to ride this out. Of course, he was spectacularly unqualified when he was named to the position. He had no experience at the FBI. He'd been writing children's books that were just cartoonish political allegories about
bad children's books.
Yeah, right. It was like King Donald and the wacky wizard Kash, who protects him from the evil Hillary Clinton. And I mean, it was, just absurd, ridiculous stuff. Meantime, most FBI directors are people who have had serious careers in law enforcement. And so you get the feeling he's really in over his head, and he's there primarily just as Donald Trump's political flunky and sycophant.
Okay, so with the time we have left, I would like to step out of the news for a moment and talk about what's really interesting to me. I've been so excited about the opportunity to chat with you, so I want to get into some of the stuff that I find very exciting. I learned recently that in 1996, you represented Ross Perot in regards to his exclusion from the 96 presidential debates. And while we're talking about free speech, I feel like it behooves me to explore what happened there. Because I was born in 2000. I am not from the Ross Perot era, but I just think that whole situation was so neat. What was going on back then?
So, first of all, I will tell you, young man, that I've written some stuff about it if you want to get into it in greater depth. And if you check out my book called Overruling Democracy, I have a lot in there about debate exclusion and what I call debate gerrymandering. And I wrote a few law review articles also on the subject. But essentially, I didn't know Ross Perot. He found me because I had been an advocate for greater democracy and openness in the electoral system. I had done some work for Reverend Jesse Jackson, also in elections and voting rights. And when he reached me, I said I would be delighted to support his right to participate in the presidential debates. He was on the ballot in every single state. He had won public campaign financing based on his performance in the prior election. By any objective measure, he should have been included in the debate that was sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. And basically, the two parties got together and said they wanted to exclude him and told that to the Commission on Presidential Debates. And I basically made the argument for him that the Commission on Presidential Debates would, in effect, be making an illegal corporate expenditure in a presidential campaign if it put on a debate just between Clinton and Dole in 1996 and excluding Perot. And the argument for that, now in those days, this is pre-Citizens United, corporations could not just spend whatever they wanted on a political campaign. They were banned from doing that. And so my argument was that if they exclude one candidate and then elevate the other two, it becomes an illegal corporate TV ad, essentially, for those two candidates. And so I had a very long, in-depth analysis of this for Perot. The general counsel of the Federal Election Commission completely agreed with our analysis and said he could not be excluded because he was equally situated. He was on the ballot in all of the states. He had qualified for public financing. He was running, I can't remember, it was somewhere around 16 or 17% in the polls. He was a serious factor. But the 6 Democrats and Republicans on the Federal Election Commission got together and voted to exclude him. So, I am a capital D Democrat because I believe strongly in the program and the values of the Democratic Party, but I am a small d Democrat too, and believe in taking down all of the barriers to political entry for third parties and independents. And I've taken a similar position on ballot access for third parties or independents. In Maryland, for example, if I want to run for Congress or governor or anything, I need one signature, my own signature, and then I sign up, and then I'm going to be in the primary. If I wanted to run as an independent or Reform Party or Green or something like that, I need to go out. I don't know the exact numbers, but I need to go get 60 or 70,000 signatures with everybody's political ward, their precinct, their congressional district. I've got to get their signature. I've got to get an address. I mean, I tried to get some family members to sign a birthday card a few weeks ago, and it took like 5 weeks to get 14, names on it. So, I mean, that's just an impossible task. And I do think that that's political discrimination in violation of the Equal Protection Clause in the First Amendment.
Okay, well, before my next question, I just want to say you didn't just do some work for the National Rainbow Coalition. All right, he's being humble. That's okay. It's a virtue, and I love it. But Mr. Raskin, from 1989 to 1990, unless Wikipedia is lying to me, served as general counsel for Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, which I think is pretty cool.
This is true, and I got to do lots of Voting Rights Act litigation, lots of ballot access stuff, I learned a lot about the difficulties that people have getting heard in the political process, and we need to open it up so we can just keep.
Wait, you were general counsel for the Rainbow Coalition when you were 27?
Yes, indeed, I was. Well, I was an assistant attorney general before that. So, that's a different story. I went to college when I was 16 years old. It was an act of child abuse.
How did I not know that?
Yes.
Wait,
dude,
unless my memory is failing me, did you go to Harvard at 16?
I'll just tell you, during my first week of school, everybody was out, getting drunk and losing their virginity, and I was looking for the chess club, and I brought my Star Wars lunchbox with me. So
okay, so we're just pivoting this entirely. Okay, if we're talking about Star Wars, I was recently listening to a podcast that I really enjoy from The Ringer called The Rewatchables, and they were talking about Star Wars and kind of like thinking every thought you can have about Star Wars. And one of the critiques, of which there are so few, is that Luke is a little bit whiny. And when you're a young kid, as I was, and I was Luke Skywalker for Halloween every year until I was like 14, you love Luke Skywalker. But when you reflect back, you're like, he is a little whiny. Do you have any Star Wars hot takes? Because that's kind of mine.
No, you make an interesting point, because a comparable insight I had about that was To Kill a Mockingbird. When we were growing up, everybody loved To Kill a Mockingbird. It was everybody's favorite novel. And then Harper Lee wrote another novel afterwards, and then people began to have a racial critique of even the liberals, even Atticus Finch, that he was like the great white salvation and the great white hope. So I can see that point, and that makes good sense to me.
It was on Broadway a couple of years ago when I was a freshman at Columbia. Don't ask me if I graduated. When I was a freshman at Columbia, it was on Broadway with Jeff Daniels as Atticus Finch, and they presented a new spin on it to address the racial lens with which it had been viewed, understandably so. And I believe it was Samuel L. Jackson's wife as Calpurnia. And this does not lead me to a question. That was just a random thought that I had. Mr. Raskin, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you've had a busy week. We are so appreciative of your time. And I'm sure we will be in touch.
Well, thank you very much, Cam. Thank you for your amazing advocacy on gun safety. And I said today, people who are in public life like Charlie Kirk and Melissa Wortman should not have to go out in public and fear being shot down just because of their speech. But nobody should have to fear being shot down just going to elementary school or high school or to work or to a concert or what have you. And I thank you for what you do. And I thank you, Jack, for your great journalism. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.